Many of you guys that have followed me for a lot of years know that a lot of the videos that I do prior to probably the last few years, although I still have some of those too, are bad tile jobs. And I don't do the videos of bad tile jobs to kind of pump myself up. I know I get a lot of comments from people who are saying, you know, well, let's see your work and you're not perfect and da-da-da, and I never claimed to be. The reason I do these videos specifically, and when I started out on YouTube back 8 years ago, the reason that I did the videos back 8 years ago, before I even had an audience or following or anything, is to make aware people that are having tile work done, the things that can go wrong and the things that you need to do to mitigate those things that go wrong. That's the reason I post these videos, is for that consumption of the consumer who's having a bad job done, or more to the point, is contemplating getting the job done and don't want to run into a bad job. And that's the reason I do the videos. So I digress. I am at a large area. This area, from walking in here, this is large format wood-like type plank tile. And it's very, very large. So as you come into the foyer area, there's a bathroom area that got done over here, the half bath. There's a little office area back here that got done. There's a huge living room going on here. And then of course, it kind of ties into the kitchen. And this is all contiguous tile that I wasn't aware of. Well, let me say this also. Concrete, when it's poured on foundations, is not always perfect level. I've just never run into that, whether it be a basement or a job like this or whatever. Look at the lippage. So, because concrete is not perfect, and because tile isn't perfect, you can tell, obviously, this tile, these two tiles don't match for sure, but it almost looks as if this tile is bent, like it's bent inward. And tile is not perfect as well as your concrete. When your concrete foundation isn't perfect, like within a basement, you must have a buildup of your thin set. So on every tile job, you're going to have thin set troweled out, and then you're going to have back buttering of your tile. And so what that does is it gives you about, you know, roughly 3/8, quarter inch or whatever of manipulation. That goes for shower walls, that goes for floors, goes with everything. When you don't know that, and what I like to say is I follow my tile, not the floor. And that's even on a wood floor. I follow my tile and not the floor. So where I start from is usually the entrance of a bathroom, which is the highest point because that has a header on the bathroom door and all that stuff. That's the highest point. If there's any low points, it's going to be beyond that. And so that's where the buildup of the thin set usually happens, is way back here. But at the beginning of the door, I'm not suggesting that this is a high point. What I'm saying is, wherever your high point is, you figure that out. If you got to get a laser or whatever, you figure that out, and that's where you want to start. Then you follow your tile. You say you put levels on your tile and make sure that you follow your tile and not the floor. If you follow your floor, meaning that you trail out your thin set and don't back butter and don't put that build up there, then you're in trouble. You're going to end up with lippage. You're going to end up with a lot of issues that you cannot overcome. Because if you get to a high point, let's say your foundation floor goes up a little bit, a couple of areas have a little bump in it, you can't sand down your concrete. You can't make that happen. You have to be at your highest point. Anyway, without further ado, when you first walk in here, and as I first walked in here, I'm like, oh, this isn't bad. When she called me, I walked in here and she said she had a lot of lippage and all that stuff, and I said, ooh, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. But when you take a closer look, and a lot of my videos, I'm taking a closer look and I'm critiquing the other guy because I want the consumer of this video is the potential customer, not necessarily of mine, but they're going to have something done, and I want them to know what they should know before they get into the conundrum of having paid for something that's not right or not even done the way that it should have been. This is 800 square feet of tile. It's a lot of tile. It's a lot of tile. 800 square feet of tile. That I don't know, again, where the highest point of the room was. But apparently this hearth was done by the tile guy who did the floor. So more than likely, I would have started at this hearth and not tried to make it flush. The reason is because I can't start it, and unless I know where the high point is, which is nearly impossible to know with all these variations of areas going on. Unless I know where the high point of this room is, I'm gonna create my own high point. So I wouldn't have had this tile flush. I would have probably put a 1/2 inch backer board and glued that down to the concrete first. Then I would have back buttered and troweled out my thin set and everything, so that in the end this hearth would have been probably 1/2 inch, 3/4, maybe even 1 inch high, right? That could have been trimmed out by another piece of marble around it. It could have been trimmed out by quarter round. It could have been trimmed out at the bottom by anything. But it gives you a parameter to work with, so that you start out from this direction, say from this direction, right? And you work your way out to where you can actually build up your thin set. That's most likely what I would have done. That way you don't have the issue that you're having here. I don't know where I saw it. I think it was the bathroom. If you look over here, it looks like the tile is bent in. There's a definite dip going on, and the only reason there would be a dip is because this guy followed his floor and not his tile. You see, that's the problem that he got into. There's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, you know, even the point that there was grout left on here, the tile wasn't even cut nicely, although he did manage to cut out the bottom of this trim on the door, but then the grout job was horrible, and as I said, the tile wasn't. The tile should have been cut somewhere around here and kind of pushed in there, and it doesn't look like it was done that way. Those are kind of small potatoes, but look at the dip. Look at the tile around the toilet. There's a lot of tilers out there that believe, well, you're never going to see, once the toilet's on there, you're never going to see the flange anymore anyway, so what difference does it make how I cut? So you have all these little angle cuts, little nipper cuts, yeah, I don't know that he used a wet saw on here. In fact, he probably didn't. Yes, it doesn't matter. Yes, the toilet will go on there eventually and hide all this stuff, but why would you do this? Like, you know, to me it's just sloppy. Even though my toilets are never seen, all my tiles still get a circular cut all the way around. That's just me. Anyway, there's so many issues here. I don't want to spend a lot of time just nitpicking on everything, but a lot of the stuff that I'm mentioning does matter. Coming back over here, and there is lippage. Some of it is small. Well, I just got it right there. Yeah, some of it is small, some of it is very profound, and I think the profound parts that was pointed out to me is over here in the kitchen area, where I need something flat. I need a flat edge of something. Boom, boom. I mean, I shouldn't be able to do that on the corner. So she was concerned about cutting her foot, and I wish there was like 4D, not 3D, but 4D on this, because there's probably close to 1/8 of an inch discrepancy between this tile and that tile. That's how profound that is. And it tapers down. There's still lippage on my thumb. There's no lippage over here, but it begins about here and it goes around. So none of these 3 tile around here match up. Boom, boom. So, especially on the corner. And that corner is sharp, and she was concerned about cutting her foot on there barefoot. And at first I told her, yeah, I don't know if that's possible. I've never heard of someone cutting their foot on tile, but as I'm feeling it now, yeah, that's a very real possibility. So not good. Asking me if I can fix that. No, I can't fix that. The problem and the conundrum that I get into with fixing a bad job like this is because I don't know the makeup. I don't know how he set the tile. There's probably not the buildup that I talked about. So which tile would you take out? You're chasing your tail. You take out this tile because it's setting up higher, but then when you start chipping out the thin set and all that stuff, you realize there's not enough thin set to chip out, and you try and put this tile back in there, and you cannot make it work. You cannot shave off the bottom part of that tile to make it thinner so that it fits everything. You know, one tile begets the next tile, which begets the next one. So this is definitely not good. And there's a few of those places in the kitchen that are pretty profound like that. The cuts aren't great, you know, like there's no reason to have an inch discrepancy on this cut over here next to the baseboard or next to the cabinet. There's just no reason for that. With all the tile that he set in here, with the preponderance of all the different cuts that he had to do, Why skip that? Especially when it's going to be seen. Nothing's going to hide that. Sometimes tilers will say, well, I'm up against a baseboard and the quarter round's going to hide any discrepancy. True enough, but how are you going to hide something like that? You can't hide that. So here's another area back by the cabinet that was really dug into with the grout. And again, you know, I think he's thinking this is probably a good part of an inch thick, but he's probably thinking I'm just going to put quarter round in there again. I wouldn't put quarter round. You got brown cabinets and brown tile. The only reason I put quarter round in is around baseboard. I don't like going back on cabinets, especially when things match. Like, why would you do that knowing that you have a contrasting grout? Look at that gap. A huge gap going on here. But again, we'll hide it with quarter round. It's just, you know, in the end, it needs to be at least neat, right? There's nothing about this that is neat. So, I mean, even around here, this isn't too bad. It's not as bad as what I just showed you, but, you know, there's no reason you're going to take your time on something like this and have it done right and not leave all that grout smudge going on besides the lippage. Just, I don't know. It's just me. I couldn't get away. I couldn't get away with doing something like that. These tile are chipped. Like you got literally 3 tile that are chipped on the edge, and you can't rectify that either. What are you going to do? Paint the tile? I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm not doing work like this. I wouldn't get paid doing work like this. Oh, and by the way, he's using white thin set. I can clearly see that white thin set was used. Just so you know, when you have a darker tile and a darker grout, darker grout, you're going to use a darker thin set gray. Because if you don't, you're going to have bleed through. And I've already seen bleed through going on here in a couple of places where the grout is not as dark as it should be because of the bleed through that happened. So just be on point about that also. Darker grout, darker thin set. Lighter grout, lighter thin set. Kind of makes sense. But, you know, he used white thin set over here and smudged it all around everywhere. Little stuff that matters. As I said, you know, when you look at the overall floor, when somebody walks in and they don't know this stuff, then you're like, oh, this isn't bad. But, you know, you do the closer look and that tells the tale, especially with the contrast of the grout. So there's just a lot of issues here. Another one that was pointed out to me, look here. So this part here matches this corner piece, right? This is a full tile, despite the fact that he cut it twice. But then you come over here, so this is in thirds, right? Thirds meaning every third tile is kind of replicated. So this is a full tile, this is kind of a half, and then, or a third anyway, and then another third, should be another third, but why is the corner piece there? This should have been a full piece, right? Just little things like that was pointed out. Now there's 2 cuts over here where none of those 2 cuts should have happened. Those should have been full pieces into the corner. So I know I'm ranting about a lot of things that for some people out there it doesn't matter, but it does matter. It matters a lot. This woman spent a lot of money. There's some lippage there that's pretty profound. And yes, you could cut your foot on that. And I don't have anything to gauge that by. I don't have that little plastic thing. But there's another one here, you know, not too far away. So there is, even though you don't see it when you're standing up, when I first started the video, you're like, oh, that's not too bad. But yes, it is bad. For the money that she spent, especially here, look at this. I wish the video could show how profound that is, you know, like, I think she found me from a video I did a couple of years ago where I did an entire floor like this and had an island in the middle. Not an island like this, but literally like a bathroom and a staircase and all this stuff, and I had to wrap around my tile like this. It's almost the same type of tile, wrap around all the way in the kitchen, dining room, former living room, and had to have the 2 match. And I didn't know where to start, and I didn't know how, and I almost didn't do the job. I almost declined the job because I wasn't confident that I could make it happen, but I did, and because I took my time and did the math and all that stuff, but I did what I call the bucket test. So I slung a bucket across my floor sideways, and the bucket just ran, and I'll post that video in the description box if you haven't seen it before, and I ran my bucket across the floor, you know, not to kind of like pat myself on the back, but just to show that there wasn't any lippage. There's no way this floor could pass the bucket test. If I started here, it would fail 3 tiles up. So there's a lot of issues going on here. The bigger issue, which I didn't mention, or I started to mention a little bit, a large format tile, which this basically is, should have been done in thirds, because as I mentioned earlier, the tile's not perfect. Porcelain tile is burned at a certain temperature. I'm not going to go into the specifics of it, but in the end, you have a little bowing of tile that you cannot see individually. You take a tile out and you go, oh no, it's straight. It's not straight. You know, there's a little bit of bowing going on with all tile, almost all tile, which is the reason you do it in thirds. This was almost done in thirds, but not really. So this would have been a third. The next tile should have stopped here and not over here, right? So in thirds, you can cut down on your lippage, but that's only part of the trick. The trick is also to do the buildup. See, there's lippage right there. In the sunlight, you can see them better, and that's why I open all the blinds. This one is really sharp. This corner is horrible. Quite profound lippage over here. I mean, again, this is such a large area. For me to try and fix all this stuff, all this lippage, is virtually impossible. It's not pragmatic to take out all this tile, scrape off the floor and start over again, because it would take a week to make that happen and prep it down to the point where it's tileable again. So I think in the end, what she's decided to do is have a company come in and just put a floating fake wood floor on it. I think out of bamboo type of flooring or something like that. But I think that's the best, not the ideal result, but I think it's the best result insofar as, you know, how to fix. You can't fix this stuff. You can't fix it. You know, there's lippage going on right where my finger's at too, and that's not acceptable. It's just it's kind of a piss poor job. And I feel sorry for people who have this done, which gets me back to square one when I started the video. When you're having a floor work done, and as I've mentioned on a couple of videos that I've done, where she found this person is that he had done some work doing something else, and then he had a friend who had a friend that did tile. But people need, especially in 2018 going forward, or even backward, do due diligence. Find out about your tiler. Find out that they know what they're doing. Find out. I mean, I don't know what to tell you on the due diligence part. I still continue to get jobs. Even, you know, the showers that I normally do are done horribly, and I thought that was only 8 years ago. But going forward, people are still doing showers that have no business doing showers because they did a backsplash for the next door neighbor, or because they theoretically did a floor that turned out good. A floor is not a shower. A backsplash is not 800 square feet of floor. So even if the guy, well, so the point being is that go on the internet, find out about your tiler, find out before, get a couple of estimates, you know, go to a tile place and, get some referrals from a tile place where those guys are running into tilers all the time. That's the way to go about it. I don't have a problem with a reference from a friend of a friend of a friend or a family member or whatever. I don't have a problem with that as long as you've done your part, right? Don't just trust it on somebody else, because that's going to make enemies with the person that referred you to that person. You know, they did a horrible job for me, and that's not a good thing. So just know what you know before you get into this, because, you know, this poor customer is now spending twice, you know, having the floor redone over again. It's not pragmatic to take all this tile up, waste all this money, and try and go back in with tiles. So she actually did the smart thing, and she's just going to have it covered up, and that's a shame. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, then subscribe. Hit that button and subscribe. I make nothing off of YouTube, so please be a Patreon member. I'm going to post a link down below to my Patreon account, and you can donate $1, $5, $10, $20 a month. Just pledge that on a monthly basis. That will help me produce more videos and content so that you can watch and learn from my channel. And donate at least $50 if you're going to call. If you're going to call for advice, donate to my PayPal, please. Donate first, and then feel free to call me or email me for advice. Otherwise, business calls only, please.